Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am ecstatic tonight. Do you know why I'm ecstatic? Because I've reached a milestone, an incredible milestone. See, this program started back on April 4th in 2020. It started just shortly after my birthday in 2020. And I had literally 0 listeners and followers. And I created the show. I mean, I've told you this before, and I've created the show, and I didn't really know what to do with it, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to do the show, and it's morphed throughout the history. You can go back and look at episode 1 and listen to why I created the channel and everything else, but it has really morphed throughout time and space. And here we are on October 26th of 2022, and I have passed the pinnacle of 300 subscribers on Rumble. And so, because of that, I need to put out a celebration. That's right. I have passed 300 subscribers on Rumble, and I am telling you folks that it is all due to you. It is all due to the Whiskey Warriors. And let me explain why. Because every single one of you has provided me with the energy to do the things that I do, to bring the content to the show, to up my game in terms of the streaming, in terms of the visuals, adding different segments like the questions for whiskey and the pet of the week, which tonight we've got a great one tonight. And, you know, just to do different things and to up the entertainment value for you, because you guys coming back is what I actually live for. That's what makes this great. I mean, it really would suck to come online and be sitting here and not have the chat going crazy like this. And so this is why I have you to thank, not just for subscribing, but also for helping me make the channel what it is and to make this program and this show what it is. And, you know, you encourage me, which in turn makes me want to do more for you. So we just keep in this symbiotic relationship, you know, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's why I thank you for doing all of the things that you do. I know that there's certain people out there who have really pushed and helped to get my numbers up to where they are. We're not done yet. I definitely don't want you to think that we're done. I'm not stopping. I want to make this channel. I mean, my ultimate goal even now is for this to essentially grow into a 5-day-a-week, possibly even like a 3-hour-a-day sort of thing, and grow beyond what is here. I've got big dreams, big thoughts about this. I want to do this kind of thing, hopefully, in not only just the near future, but also for the long-term future as well. And you guys who are here, who've started off the first 301, because I picked up my 301st, 301st, whatever you call it. I picked that person up just shortly before coming on the broadcast. It was a individual who has been following me on Twitter and has started retweeting when I'm letting people know that I'm coming on. And it's great to see. I'm loving it. I hope you're loving it too. The survey that I put together is still out there. It is still, I should probably drop the link in the chats if I can find it. Maybe I'll do that. Let's see let me see if I can find it real quick. But just so you know, I've got 16 responses right now, which is absolutely great. There's my little thing letting me know that the podcast is going on. No kidding. But let me see here. Let's go with this. Yeah, here. I'm going to drop this in the chat. So you guys can all take a look. If you haven't had an opportunity to go through and fill this out, I'd really appreciate it. This is, again, I've got 16. I'd like to at least get 20, in as a part of it. I'd like to get at least 20 responses, but anyway, Rumble. And I know I talk about this a lot. I talk about how YouTube, I have 85 subscribers on YouTube, and that is not something that I definitely, want to gloss over. Those are people who are over on YouTube who have either subscribed because they like the content, or even I've seen some subscribe because of the notifications and stuff that YouTube has. It's a little bit better than Rumble, but Rumble has been growing. Rumble has been changing. Rumble has been expanding. And as the free speech alternative to YouTube, and considering its youth in terms of how much it's come a long way in a very, very short period of time. And so I really want to support Rumble, and definitely with the 301 subscribers that I've got on Rumble now, this is my home. This is where I want to be. And YouTube, it's great. I stream there. If they ever decide that what I'm doing is bad for them, then they'll kick me off. That's fine. Whatever. I don't care. I also stream on Facebook. That's a backup, as well as Twitter is a backup too. And I also send this out to a service that turns it into an audio only program that shows up on, Google and Spotify and some of those other places, some of the less obscure ones as well. So I've really come a long way in a short period of time, just to kind of say thank you, because again, without you, I wouldn't have the drive to try to up my game to make things here a lot more entertaining and a lot more exciting for you guys to show up and start jumping in on the chat. I also want to give a shout out to the newcomers, the front rowers, the ones that pop in order to sit down in the front row and get the front row seat. I kind of give you guys a little bit of guff by seeing you show up a little early, but you know what? It's all due to love, because again, you guys showing up, it warms my heart to know that you are taking an extra amount of time out of your day to come here and listen to the program. And what I am putting together for you is valuable enough for you to take valuable time out of your day and come and listen to the program. And so thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all of my Whiskey Warrior P1s, which again, that's an industry term for the top end listeners, the ones that are constantly there, that show up all the time. They're the ones that program, and this is where it comes from, that program that P1 point on your radio station or on your radio, in your truck or whatever, truck, car, whatever, and you press that P1 button, that primary one button, that is your favorite radio station. And so that's where the terminology comes from. So that's why I call you my Whiskey Warrior P1s. So thank you very much for getting me to this pinnacle. I do appreciate it. And we're going to keep on going. My next goal is 350. I want to try and hit 350 fairly soon, I'm hoping. But I don't want to rest on my laurels. I've got to try and kick this stuff off and get even better. But I had to take a moment and say thank you all to all of my subscribers, listeners, watchers. I appreciate it. At 300 on Rumble, if you haven't gone over to Rumble yet, do me a favor, go over to Rumble, get on, create an account. It's free. Come on over to Whiskey_Musings_Broadcast and subscribe. And that way you'll know that I will always be at that point, regardless of if the other places drop me off. Rumble will always be here. All right. Now, let's get on to the real important stuff. So tonight, I am drinking the Four Roses single barrel. And as you can see, I don't have very much left, but fear not. Fear not, because my wonderful wife went out and bought me a brand new bottle. So I have another bottle sitting on the shelf waiting for me to crack that one open. And tonight I am enjoying the bourbon, the Kentucky bourbon from Four Roses. And I was accused by Outlaw Dogs earlier by imbibing a little too early, because she posted that she is going off to another Trump rally in Pennsylvania, which we'll see if we have any way of kind of connecting. I want to say what I was first thinking, but connecting up either just before or just after the rally or something like that. We'll figure something out. But anyway, that's going to happen on November 5th. Anyway, the point that I'm making is I sort of tried to tease her a little bit on Twitter, and it didn't go over very well because she didn't get the joke. Okay, folks, I am sarcastic at times, and I will try and tease a lot, in case you haven't noticed. So I do that in the chats on the Mark K Show and everything else. Speaking of the Mark K Show, don't miss 1 week from tonight at 8 p.m. on the East Coast time and 5 p.m. on Pacific time. I will have the one and only, the chief, the Patriot Commander himself here for a interview right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. That will be next Wednesday. So mark your calendars, next Wednesday for him. In fact, here is an image of him. I was supposed to flash this while I said that, but I got too involved. Anyway, I will have the Patriot Commander himself here live next Wednesday. So come and join that. And also Saturday will be my Halloween special. Now, that, for those of you that haven't seen the Halloween specials of the past, I take a break from my usual fare of, politics and things like that. And I try to put together a scary program, as much as of scary as I possibly could. There was one 2 years ago where I turned myself completely red. There was one last year that I blanked myself out and all you could see was my head. So this year we'll see what I come up with. So anyway, so that'll be Saturday. Saturday is at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. All right. So it's becoming common. It's becoming really, really common these days for the Dems to actually spout off and really show how dim of a light bulb they actually have in their head. And nobody does that better than Joyless Reid or the people on The View. Or we used to have Brian Stelter. We used to have Tubin. We still have Donald Lemon. All of these people on the left and in CNN and MSNBC and ABC, they just show how much of a dim bulb that is in their head in terms of understanding what is going on with today in today's society. So check this out. This comes from Newsbusters, and Joy Reid was on her failing show, The Reid Out, and she on MSNBC, and she basically got another loser in the way of Democrat Matthew Dowd, who used to be an independent, who used to be a Republican, who used to be a Democrat ahead of that. But he got on and she was interviewing with him, and she basically said something to the effect of about how democracy is on the ballot, that it's not a slogan. She talks about women losing agency over themselves, in which case she's referring to the Roe versus Wade overturn issue. And then she talks, she let her guest, and I just lost him, Dowd. She let Dowd take over, and Dowd basically said that, I'm a little concerned about this because of the similarities between the other side talking about inflation and everything. And that's basically how Hitler came into power, was they were worrying about inflation and so on and so forth. And, so she just, the Dems all have their talking points. They really do. They jump on the bandwagon, and unfortunately, they're still hooking up their wagon to the whole idea of abortion being the biggest kitchen table issue on this November ballot. Now, remember, we're little less than 2 weeks away. Early voting has opened in many, many locations. And so, they are trying to push their base to come out and vote for the Democrats that are out here. The problem is, though, that the Dems that are being presented are really having some troubles. Like, for an example, John Fetterman. Now, under normal circumstances, I would be critical of the man because of a lot of his stances. He is a generally very aligned with socialism. He, has stated a bunch of things that realistically can't come true. Like, for an example, letting out a third of criminals out of jail. He has gone back and forth on things like fracking. And he debated Mehmet Oz last night and just put on what can only be described as an abysmal showing. And realistically, it's not because of him or his necessarily his ideas. What it is it's based off of the fact that the man suffered a stroke in the pre-primary stages. He went to the hospital, and when he came out, they still pushed him. Because he actually won the Democrat primary, and they have been pushing to put him on the ballot. I'm telling you right now, based on all of the videotape that I have seen, this man has a health issue that should be taken care of. It's no different than Joe Biden. Joe Biden has a cognitive decline. He has problems. He needs to be attended to. These people should not be running for office. What they should be doing is trying to convalesce, to get themselves back into shape. In the case of Joe Biden, finish out his whatever time he has left in relative comfort and obscurity, and not having to deal with the troubles that we have here in America today. Now, that being said, unfortunately, in the case of Fetterman, or Fetterwoman, as he calls himself, he is being pushed this way, and he's lost some of the ability to not only understand English, but also to be able to respond back in English as well. His mind is not healthy. He's got some serious issues, and he needs to just go away. And I hate to say that. I mean, I would, but, and by go away, I don't mean like, pass on to the next phase of, energy or life, or, die or any of that. What I'm talking about is he needs to focus. He and his family need to focus on getting him better. Now, if he comes back, at later times, gets everything right, goes through rehab or whatever else, and comes back, so be it. But the man is definitely not capable mentally right now to be able to handle being in the Senate of the United States. Now, a couple other debates happened. You had, Governor Whitmer. She had a debate that she apparently lost. Some of the Kathy Hochul up in New York had a debate that she apparently lost. Now, the difference with Kathy Hochul is the fact that Kathy literally said out loud that she would she would not have changed anything that she did during the COVID pandemic, looking back on it. That she would still mask your kids, keep them out of school, give them the shots, and all of those things. I've got more on that in just a minute, but the point is, though, that she actually, rather than trying to lie and manipulate the things that she has said in the past to make it to where, maybe you misunderstood her, she actually came out and was at least honest. I mean, she was at least honest to the point of saying that she would do everything that she did in COVID, even though COVID, it's been well proven multiple times that what we've done in COVID was not the brightest ideas in order to handle it. So that being said, sorry, I just noticed a comment. But thank you for that. I didn't realize that. So Outlaw Dogs, apparently she's giving me a shout out that my hockey show last week scooped the whole thing on the NHL, thinking that they were too white. You should go back and listen to that. I had a great guest on, Steve Stiles, who is a hockey podcaster, hockey fanatic, used to be a hockey player, and definitely knocked it out of the park, I must say. So thank you for that. Thank you, Outlaw Dogs, for that. All right. The biggest issue that I see with the Democrats, especially in this election cycle, is the fact that they have stepped away so far down the path that they don't even know what the kitchen table issues are. Let me explain to you what I mean here. This article came out as a part of the Epoch Times, and apparently there's a poll that came out that 95% of Americans are concerned about the rise in food prices ahead of the midterms. Now, this is a kitchen table issue. I'm sorry, but the price of food, everybody is feeling it, okay? Everyone is feeling it, or at least I should say everybody except the elites that are either running this country or have the money that they don't, it doesn't affect them that much. The thing about it is, though, is that this Pew Research poll that was apparently conducted last week showed that 73% are very concerned and 22% are somewhat concerned about the rise in prices, while a combined 93% are very or somewhat concerned by the rise in gasoline. And another 87% were similarly concerned about the rise in housing costs. And another 70% were concerned about how the stock market is doing. So money and the value of the dollar and the amount of goods and services that dollar can buy, which is essentially a side part to inflation, is a kitchen table issue. And not one single Democrat is really running or trying to run on this issue. And that's because they literally have failed at it by agreeing to do the Inflation Increasing Act, otherwise known as the Inflation Reduction Act, by agreeing to do or even look at the Build Back Better plan, by even agreeing to go with some of the other bills that have gone through, like sending money off to Ukraine for 3, 4, 5 times. I think it's up to 5 to 7 now. In terms, and they're still promising more. I got something about that here later on in the program. But, all of this additional money that they have been spending and putting into our deficit and pushing our deficit up to historic levels is all contributing to things like where these rise in food prices and stuff are, where the rise in gas, the rise in housing. I mean, not everybody is on a fixed interest loan for their homes. Just even renters have had rental agreements where things have been doubling and tripling in some cases, depending upon where you go. I saw a report not too long ago from a place that basically said that there's only 4 or 5 cities in the entire United States where someone who is making less than 6 figures can actually afford to live. This is a huge problem. And if you're only getting a small percentage, less than 5% in a raise, you're actually losing money when inflation rates are in the 8%, 9% range. You're losing about 3 to 4% of your wages just by the sheer amount of dollars that it takes to chase the same goods and services that would eventually or it basically be lower at a lower inflation rate. And this is something that the Dems don't grab onto. They do not understand these simple economic terminologies and the simple economics of all of this. And so, this is a big kitchen table issue, a huge issue, and it should be a huge issue for this coming election on the ballot. Now, I don't want to get you guys concerned, but the government is actually trying to avoid some information, or avoid our side, I guess you could say, by getting information from them about certain programs that they have running around. So check this one out from the Epoch Times. The DOJ, surprise, surprise, is blocking requests for information on enforcement of what they call a federal election scheme. And what they're talking about here is that for the first overt time, let's say, the federal government and the Biden administration in particular has been pushing regulatory agencies to increase the amount of voters, to increase the amount of voting people are doing. They're trying to push people to go and vote. And a watchdog group that's out there called the Foundation for Government Accountability filed a lawsuit against the DOJ earlier this year about how it is implementing an executive order that was signed in March of 2021 titled the Promoting Access to Voting. The text of the order, according to the White House statement, is laced with claims that Black Americans and minority groups have faced discriminatory policies, and as such, federal agencies should partner with local, state, and other election officials to protect and promote the exercise of the right to vote, eliminating discrimination and other barriers to voting, and expand access to voter registration and accurate election information. Now, the FGA has only given the group the DOJ has only given the group FGA a series of heavily redacted documents. And the organization told this to Fox News on Tuesday that it's looking to take more legal action against the DOJ, accusing it of hiding alleged details about how the government is working on behalf of, surprise, surprise, the Democrats. Now, this is important. This is actually an important issue because if you look at some of the early voting numbers, this would indicate that we are dealing with a situation here that would, slow voting down. That something like this, if the suppression that is out there that these people are claiming, that you would be able to find somebody who could essentially say that, hey, I wanted to vote, but I was prevented from doing so, which would be entirely illegal from a federal point of view, and not to mention some state point of views. And so this is something that it would be kind of interesting about that. However, we've been getting reports coming out of places like Georgia in particular, who took a lot of hits in terms of changing some of their election laws and stuff. All of a sudden, the Georgians have been voting more, that they've had better access. So this counterdicts the narrative that the government is trying to say that these people are being oppressed, that people are not being allowed to vote. And this further, it brings up the point right here in the Epoch Times. Nearly 10 million have voted in 2022 midterms so far as more states open early voting. So, the numbers are not showing that there is voter suppression. In fact, I would really be interested, extremely interested, if there was somebody who would come on camera and basically state that they were disencouraged, I guess is the best way to put it, that they were pushed away, that they couldn't vote, that they had issues with trying to vote, and things like that. I mean, I would love to see it. I don't think you're going to find anybody because of the plain and simple fact that it's not there. They just don't exist. The whole idea of voter ID is debunked completely by the people like that have gone out and asked voters, hey, do you have a driver's license? Do you have some form of identification? And everybody comes back, which this is absolutely true. You have to have identification in order to buy basic medicines at pharmacies. You have to have it to buy alcohol. If you're over 21, you have to have it to do all kinds of things in our country. And yet, for some reason, the minute that you say, hey, let's have that same ID apply to voting, all of a sudden the Democrats freak out about that. And they're like, oh, no. People can't get IDs. They just can't do it, which is entirely inaccurate and false. All right. So this kind of stuff is happening. And even Politico, the far left wing outlet, even the far left wing rag Politico has got some concerns. This article from Hot Air highlights it. That apparently the Democrats are worried about lower black voter turnout will eviscerate their path to victory in this November. Now, by what they're talking about is lower black voter turnout for the Democrats. They're not saying lower black voter turnout, people just not voting. What they're talking about is the shift that's been going on in both the Hispanic culture as well as the African American culture, where they have actually been leaving the Democrat Party because of the Democrats' views and how they've been trying to tell people that things that are not important to Democrats and their platform, actually what is important to the family, to the families of this country, that they should just ignore those, that they should not even listen to them. Like Nancy Pelosi said, well, I don't even look at the polls because the polls are telling us that we're on the wrong track, that we are, we're not talking about kitchen table issues. So I don't even listen to the polls. And that's pretty much what she said. And she is completely wrong, of course. But Politico is basically saying that the Dems are worried about this particular thing because realistically, without the massive amounts of persons of color who have voted for them in the past consistently, without those massive amounts, they literally have no chance of winning. And so this is scaring them. This is really, really scaring them. So with less than 2 weeks coming down to the vote, this is going to be a very interesting scenario to keep an eye out and keep an eye on. All right. So realistically, here is a positive article to take a look at. Now, granted, this is a conservative leaning outlet, but it is still indicative of everything else that's been going on. All of the polls have been kind of showing this little shift, but this is coming from Red State, and Red State basically says that the wave is coming, and that more races have just moved toward the GOP. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this came out on October 25th. I do know for a fact that the shift in Pennsylvania going to Oz has happened since Fetterman's abysmal showing at the debates. And so because of that, I kind of agree that we have a red wave coming, but that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that we can sit on our laurels. We need to vote. We need to vote Republican because they may not be perfect, but the other side is completely insane. And that is the truth. So if you haven't voted yet and you're in one of those early voting states, go ahead and vote. For those of you that are hanging on for a little bit longer because you basically can't vote yet, just make sure that when you go in, you vote Republican, because like I've told people in the past, when in doubt, always vote Republican. So just vote Republican. That's all I can tell you. You want to get us out of this? Vote Republican. All right. And this isn't the only one. There are several polls that are showing it's not just the Fetterman Oz one, although that's a very important one because obviously the balance of power in the Senate is on the ballot for this November. But we also have things like Kathy Hochul, who was governor of New York, and now Lee Zeldin has a couple of polls that are showing that he's in a dead heat with Kathy Hochul. I know that in Oregon, I've said it on the last couple of programs, this time the GOP has a really good chance to upset a 40-year Democrat control of the gubernatorial mansion in Oregon. The GOP candidate has actually moved forward in the polls by a couple of points in terms of beating the Democrats down there. So this is repeating itself across the entire country, where Democrats are in and Republicans are either in neck and neck within the margin of error kind of scenarios, or you'll see the Republicans pulling out ahead by 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Or you could be like what's happening in Florida and Texas. Florida, I believe Ron DeSantis has pulled away from Charlie Crist, is now 15 points ahead in the polls. And then you have Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who just earlier this week swapped over to double digits, meaning that he was at 11% the last time that I looked. And it's even increasing farther. Beto O'Rourke is going down at this point in terms of polling. I certainly hope that when he goes, he doesn't go away mad. I don't want him to go away mad. I just want him to go away. Just like Liz Cheney. I want her to just go away. They are insignificant anymore. And here in the state of Washington, for a first time in 30 years, Patty Murray is actually very nervous because Tiffany Smiley has gotten within the margin of error here in the state of Washington, which again, these are all things that are just incredible in terms of what's happening. Now, it's not just the economy and inflation that these people are really, really having problems with. They are also having issues, and some things have come out in the news that have come back to bite the Democrats in terms of the handling of COVID. Now, this came out yesterday, and this is in Fox News, but this came out yesterday that apparently Biden is now talking after he declared the pandemic over on national television. He is now talking about COVID-related deaths this year will be the result of people not being updated on their vaccines. And apparently he went and got a updated COVID-19 booster in front of the cameras in order to make you jump on and everything else. Look, the fact of the matter is this. If you've gotten the vaccine, chances are you're covered. If you have gotten COVID, you're entirely covered. Your body has built up immunity. The reason why these vaccines were pushed in the first place was because of the fact that it would prevent transmission. That's what they were sold in the beginning. And as we've since found out in multiple occasions, the vaccine doesn't do that. So the whole idea of doing vaccine mandates or pushing people to get the vaccine would basically become an individual issue. This is no longer an issue of, you can pass COVID on to somebody else and you can't do that with the vaccine. If you're unvaccinated, you can pass it on. If you are vaccinated, you can't. This is no longer that kind of case. The only argument that the Dems can actually make is that the vaccine offers protection for yourself to keep you out of the hospital. We can debate that. There's evidence both ways. I'm not going to argue that point because realistically, it's still in the early stages to kind of look at. But what I can tell you is this: if you try to make the argument that you have to get the vaccine in order to protect everybody else, that's done. Don't even talk to me about it. It's over and done with. And I'm not the only one who is saying that. A recent New York Supreme Court decision that just came down, they overturned the vaccine mandate for public workers in New York. And the thing about it is that the court basically said that they have to get reinstated and they have to get back pay. Now, the thing about it is, with the state of New York, the Supreme Court of the state is not actually the highest court. The way that the state courts are set up, they do actually have an appellate court that is above them. And yes, this case is going to the appellate court. But the thing about it is they talked about the executive order that was a vaccine mandate executive order by former Mayor Bill de Blasio, which resulted in roughly 1,400 city employees got their walking papers. But the specifics of this are basically that the New York employees that lost their jobs, they have to go back to work. They have to get reinstated. And it also basically states that the health commissioner can't create a new condition of employment for city employees based off of this, where the health commissioner can't prohibit an employee from reporting to work, the health commissioner cannot terminate employees, and the mayor cannot exempt certain employees from these orders, especially if they do not have, especially if they have natural immunity from already being infected with COVID. So, you're going to see more things like this. You're going to see more cases like this coming out. And the reason being is because of the fact that we're learning a lot more about the long-term effects of not only the vaccine, but also the virus. We know that the virus has seriously degraded in terms of its lethality over time. And so, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen over time. You're going to see more and more of stuff like this. And the Dems, honestly, are having trouble trying to explain things like the grapple of the fallout from all the school closures. I don't know if anybody recognized this, but there was a report that came out from the Department of Education that our test scores from the COVID years are the worst ever since they've been tracking them since 1990. And now, granted, test scores, just to be honest and open and forthright, test scores were declining prior to COVID. But because of the COVID shutdowns, it's actually put our students and our education system back several, essentially a year or two. They lost roughly about a year. And the thing is that everybody who was talking about these school closures was basically saying you can't just rip kids out of the classroom and turn them into virtual learning and virtual learners because of the fact that virtual learning is something that not everybody can do. You oftentimes have to have that interaction, that one-on-one interaction from an instructor, basically in face-to-face meetings in order for this to happen. And so, you know, those of us who are on the right have discussed it, and several of the right-leaning pundits, Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro, several of these people they've basically all said the same thing, that closing the schools for a group of individuals who have the lowest death rate. In fact, it's not even registerable on some scales, some graph scales when you put it out there, but they're not even registerable for that. And so, you know, honestly, it's kind of difficult to even think about, but the Democrats are starting to feel this, and the people at home, the people who are voting, the people who are in the know, they recognize this. And honestly, this is the other thing that came out of this too, which is actually a positive in my mind. All of a sudden, with all of these people going home, all these kids going home and they're doing these online learnings, parents all of a sudden got exposure into the classroom as to what was being taught. And this is part of the reason why you have had all of the people that are all of these teachers that have been teaching stuff like CRT and social justice warrior issues rather than teaching things like reading, writing, math, science, U.S. history, or and all of those things. This is all spurred. It's because of COVID that it has spurred the parents' involvement in a lot of these school board meetings that you see all the time, that prompted, again, the FBI putting out that memo saying that people who argue at school board meetings are domestic terrorists. So a lot of things kind of have spawned out of this idea of Democrats closing schools, which, again, in the first beginnings, in the first couple of months, 2 to 3 months of COVID, I am totally on board with what was happening because realistically, we did not know what was going on. But after a period of time, we should have gotten enough data to be able to start making intelligent decisions. And one of those intelligent decisions should have been that we bring kids back to school. Now, if you recall, COVID actually hit in January. So we could have been off January, February, March, right around April, May timeframe, gotten kids back into school once we analyzed the data properly, and then have been able to pick up the following year. But there's school districts around the country that took a good year and a half off before they even got back into classes. And so this is something that's going to affect this country moving forward. Having these kids with this learning deficit is going to affect our country moving forward in the next generation. And that's what's going to be kind of scary about it. All right. So I've kind of shown multiple things that the Democrats have concerns about in the upcoming election. There are a few more things that I have to get to, but before I do, I want to bring on tonight's Pet of the Week.
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
All right. And tonight's Pet of the Week comes from, and I just realized I don't think I closed it down, so give me just a second. Let me get rid of this. Tonight's Pet of the Week comes from Anita. I'm not going to say her last name, but Anita submitted this a couple weeks ago, so I'm hoping that she's out there somewhere in the chat land. But Anita sent me this wonderful photo of her beautiful 12-year-old Catahoula, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that, and Australian Shepherd mix. This is Abigail. And as you can see, Abigail is sitting and resting comfortably on a little seat. I don't know if, I don't know the technical terms for furniture, so I'm not even going to try, but this is a chair. She apparently has a blanket or a sweater in front of her. Don't know if that's her sweater or not, but she is staring directly into the camera, unlike my dog, which can only look at you side-eyed because he hates getting his picture taken. But this is Anita, and Anita is 12 years old. You can kind of tell she's got the gray around the muzzle. That happens as they age. But knowing Australian Shepherds, I'm going to have to research what the Catahoula actually is. But knowing Australian Shepherds, I bet she was a high energy dog at one point, and really, really liked it. Yes, Amy, yes, that is how you pronounce it, or how you spell it. Catahoula, Catahoula. That is how you spell it. And so that is this week's pet of the week. And she is just a gorgeous pup. Mid-sized dog, I would imagine, probably just looking at the picture. She's, probably in the 60-pound range, maybe. Might be a little bit less than that, 50, 60, something like that. But she's probably in there pretty good. But anyway, and that is the pet of the week. If you would like to send me photos of your pets and a little bit of information about them, you can do so at fans. That's Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra. Fans at Whiskey Musings, all lowercase, all one word, .online. You've got to make sure you use .online. It's not .com, not .net. It's fans at Whiskey Musings .online. And yes, that is a plural, Whiskey Musings .online. So fans at Whiskey Musings .online. And also you can use that same address to send me questions for whiskey, which is my Saturday night segment toward the end of the program, questions for whiskey. The question can be about just about anything. I don't really discriminate as far as that goes. You can ask me personal questions. You can ask me questions about politics. You can ask me questions about just about anything, as I said. All right. It's fans at Whiskey Musings, at Whiskey Musings .online. And there it is. Outlaw Dogs went ahead and threw that up for me. So there you go. You can see it all there. But this is Abigail, the 12-year-old Catahoula Australian Shepherd mix, again submitted by Anita. Very, very nice. I love the pet of the week. Pet of the week is one of my favorite segments. It just started it on kind of a whim, and it's sort of grown from there. And I don't have one for next week, so you definitely can get that in there, and you'll be the next one on the list. So, all right. Well, let's get back to what the Democrats have been doing to this country. One of them comes from a CEO of a food organization. And let me go ahead and bring this up. So this CEO is from Kraft Heinz, and Kraft Heinz CEO says that more rounds of price increases are coming as inflation will continue. So keep in mind, okay? Keep in mind that back when we had record-breaking inflation in the 1978, 79, and the late 70s, we had record-breaking inflation. Carter was the president. Carter wanted to do certain things like raise the interest rates above the inflation rate. And he hired the guy that was in charge of the Fed at the time. His name escapes me at the moment. And Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980 in a complete landslide. I mean, one that had not been seen in this country at all. I believe it was 49 out of 50 states went for Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan continued the policies, agreed with that person's policies, the guy who was in charge of the Fed at the time. And he pushed and got things like government programs cut back. He did start spending on the military. I will agree with that. He did increase the deficit because of his military spending, but he was doing the military spending in order to win the Cold War against the old USSR. So there were reasons for what he was doing, but he also did some deregulation as well. Ironically, as you learned on one of my last episodes couple weeks back, where I compared Biden and Carter, Carter actually started a lot of the policies that Reagan just carried forward. Okay. Now Reagan gets a lot of credit for them, but Carter actually was attempting to implement. But even then, it took 2 full terms for things to really start tampering down. And it was when Reagan left office as things were starting to lower and get back into normal space. And then next thing you know, we're looking at, almost 30 years or so of good economy for the most part, up until Obama took office and decided to increase all of the spending and everything again. Now, we need to get back to those policies. We need to start deregulating. We need to start cutting. I mean, it's going to hurt. Okay, folks, it's going to hurt. We have to go through the pain in order to get to the pleasure on the other side, which will be lower inflation rates, lower interest rates, and again, a strong and good economy. The fact that's really surprising about this is the fact that it happened so quickly under Joe Biden. But, we're going to have to live with it. I can tell you right now that once 2024 rolls around, the only way for us to right this ship is to keep going with the idea that the Democrats have no clue what they're doing and that the Republicans may have an idea. But whatever their idea is, even if it's not as great as what we would want it to be, it's definitely not going to be as bad as the Democrats. So again, vote Republican, because they may not be perfect, but the other side is definitely insane. Another warning sign that things are not necessarily going to get better for us, especially in the near term, is this. I popped this article out, I believe it was my last program, and we ended up with, this report came out that the U.S. has less than 25 days of diesel. According to the Energy Information Administration, that we only have 25 days of diesel supply, the lowest that it has ever been since 2008. Now, most people would think, okay, lowest diesel, we all use gas. Who the heck cares? But almost every single product that goes across the United States goes on either trucks or rail, both of which use diesel. Okay? So this is a problem. And when you add this to a potential looming railroad strike, which, by the way, Joe Biden went in, I'll give him credit. He staved it off a little bit, but we still have a looming railroad strike coming. I haven't heard anything different. So the idea that we have 25 days of diesel, we have a looming railroad strike, we are going to be in a serious supply chain problem, and this will not be COVID related here, folks. I mean, even like all the ships and everything else, they all run on diesel as well. So, diesel oil, essentially. And so, this is concerning. This is seriously concerning. I mean, and the fact that Biden and Biden himself and the Biden administration have cut down on just about all drilling on federal lands. They have not renewed any leases. They have not allowed for any drilling. They cut down the Keystone Pipeline. Folks, it's stuff like this that impacts us for generations. This stuff is going to take us, maybe not generations, but at least for years, at least 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to take time for all of the bad things that we have had happen get reversed, even with a Republican Congress. So we have to get the Republican Congress in now. This is going to be the start. Then in 2024, we have to get a Republican president in so that we can reverse a lot of the damage that this has done, that Joe Biden himself has done to the American public and the American people. We need to get this done. Again, vote Republican. They may not be perfect, but the other side is definitely insane. All right. The other piece to this puzzle that is out here is the whole idea of Ukraine. Now, I don't know if anybody really realizes how much of an impact that Ukraine has had on our ability to defend ourselves. And I'm not talking about just the sheer manpower in the military. All of that's been taken out by a lot of the woke processes that have been going on within the military. But what I am talking about in particular is a lot of our stockpile of weapons has started to get depleted. Dan Bongino mentioned this and had an article during his podcast where he mentioned that it would take probably a good 2 to 3 years for us to replenish the Javelin missile supply that we've been sending over to Ukraine. So when I saw this article, this really makes me nervous, again, because of the fact that China is probably going to invade Taiwan. I don't think it's a question of if, it's going to be a question of when. But take a look at this. Pelosi took a trip to Croatia and pledged more aid to Ukraine. More aid than what we've already spent. We have spent billions over there. We have sent them billions of dollars of equipment. Hell, we've spent more in Ukraine than what we left in Afghanistan. Okay. And yet here she is. She's pledging more aid to Ukraine during this trip. This is ridiculous, folks. We don't even have the money for this. We really don't. All of this is what is called deficit spending. We are spending money that we haven't even collected yet in taxes. Okay. This is part of the problem. This is where we have an issue with this. And, and I'm telling you, they are just interested in just spending us into the ground. They think that money just can be printed, which is what makes inflation, on the very simplest of terms. And so this is really, really a big problem. Okay. This is an issue that should definitely make you think in terms of whether you're going to vote Democrat or Republican. Again, vote Republican. They may not be perfect, but the other side is definitely insane. All right. So here's a little snag. You know how the Democrats have been touting, and you listen to Joe Biden, you listen to the Congress, you listen to AOC. They've all been touting the whole idea of electric vehicles. Well, on this program, I've mentioned it a few times. I have said it over and over that the electric vehicles are not what they're cracked up to be. They are big, huge environmental concerns. You have fire concerns that we just saw thanks to Hurricane Ian, trying to the intrusion of salt water into the batteries causes them to start fire. You have safety concerns there. We also have electrical grid concerns that show up in California and everything. Well, this big push for electrical vehicles has hit another potential roadblock. Let me show you this from ABC News. Renters face a charging dilemma as U.S. cities move toward electrical vehicles. Now, the reason for this is because the infrastructure is not in place. And by the way, Biden and Congress pushed through a bill that made it to where, and Biden signed it, that they allocated money to do a nationwide infrastructure for charging of electrical vehicles. Okay. But the thing about this is that apparently, in Portland, Oregon, this is where this came out of, a person was, excited to join the wave of drivers adopting electric vehicles when she bought a used Nissan Leaf, but she encountered a bump in the road to clean driving. She's a renter and she doesn't have a place to plug in overnight. So check this out. Let me see if there's where's the photo? Where'd the photo go? Oh my goodness. There was a photo in here on the main page. They obviously didn't include it in this, but there was a photo in here where the renters in the area were taking and running electric cords out of their apartments from a wall outlet out of the apartment and down on the street and plugging in their cars in the city. And, you know, the picture that they had was like one car, but there was 3 or 4 electrical cords, electric extension cords that were plugging in the different cars out on the street. I mean, this is crazy. It's like you jump on the bandwagon, get into an EV. We don't have the infrastructure for it, but you know what? Go ahead and jump on it anyway. It's sort of like having a train and saying, hey, rail travel is going to be the wave of the future. Buy your train car now. And you don't even have the track built. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about here. This is absolutely nuts. The whole idea of this is just crazy. And then when you think about the fact that some of these vehicles, they can't just take wall power. They have to actually have a higher voltage, something like 240 volts, in order to actually charge the vehicle. And many of them take more than just a single hour to charge. They can take anywhere from 8 to 10 hours to get a full charge after they've been completely depleted. I mean, this is crazy. This is absolutely nuts, okay? Especially when the internal combustion engine. Now, again, I've said it before on the program. I own a Prius. The Prius is a hybrid. I actually think hybrid cars are probably the next step. If you want to save money on gas, if you want to save money, or save on gas and lower your carbon footprint in that case, hybrid vehicles are probably the better way to go. But this jump to go to all electric and direct electric vehicles, we're not ready for this. We're definitely not ready for this. And so, you know, I saw this article and I thought I'd bring it out to you because I just thought it was funny. You should have seen the photo. The photo was hilarious. If you get a chance, try to go to abcnews.go.com and it's right there on the front page of the cord running into the vehicle. It's just funny. Now, I've given you a lot of things that the Dems have done wrong. I've given you a lot of things, you know, to kind of make things look like, hey, these people really are not the smartest. Well, I got a couple good feeling stories to end the night on, okay? The first one is this. I don't know if you remember, but there was a public high school football coach here in my own state of Washington who lost his job because of the fact that he was praying on the field. Now, keep in mind that he wasn't forcing his players to pray with him, but several of them joined in of their own accord. He got fired because of some concept, idea, thought process that prayer in schools, they were supposed to be separated by the separation of church and state. He went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's been a couple years at least, but he went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court went ahead, and it was in Bremerton School District. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with him that he could not be discriminated against for praying on the field. Okay. Now, cool thing about this, he's going to get reinstated. He lost his job and now he's going to get reinstated. So we are getting and gaining ground that has been lost over the last several years. We are slowly gaining ground back. It's taking time, but that's what we need to do. It's taking time, but we need to stay in the fight. We need to keep the energy up. We can't let these people just run roughshod all over us anymore. It's time to stand up. It's time to take a stand and to say, enough. We've had enough. And so this made me feel great. I mean, I was just like, hey, this is awesome, because this guy wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't forcing his players to pray with him. He wasn't trying to force anybody. He was just simply doing the action and he got fired for it. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Now, for a little bit of comic relief. We all know how I like to hang out on Twitter and troll and play around with some of the Democrats and the libs that hang out over there. And I have been watching the whole debacle with Elon Musk with keen interest because of the fact that Twitter is literally a cesspool of leftist folks who they just want to be in an echo chamber. They only want to talk to themselves. They can't get challenged by other ideas or anything else. Well, right before I came on the program, this popped, and I did actually see the video on Twitter, but from Elon, but this popped, and this is just hilarious. Elon Musk enters Twitter HQ with a literal sink. He is carrying a sink, and he posted a short little 10-second clip, and he says, "Let that sink in." Now, for those of you that don't know, he could potentially take over on Twitter as early as this Friday. Okay. But yeah, so he actually changed his bio as well, according to the article here, which now simply states Chief Twit. And he's put his location at Twitter HQ. I mean, this guy he is a troll. He's kind of like Trump. I mean, Trump can troll with the best of them. Elon is getting up there. And what's even better is the fact that Elon has essentially said that he's going to fire close to 75% of Twitter employees once he takes over. He's already said this. He's publicly stated that he's looking at getting rid of 3/4 of the employees. Well, apparently some of them are jumping ship early. And so this also in the post-millennial, and this was posted today on the 26th, was that several hundred employees have left Twitter total in 2022, with 530 leaving in the last 3 months alone. Many have left to competitors such as Meta and Google. Well, of course, these guys are all nepotism. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been down in the San Jose area, which is like the technical, the tech valley of California. But these people, they just jump from ship to ship to ship. They go from Google to Meta to, all of the other companies that are down there, to Twitter, to whatever. I mean, they're all in the same general area within miles of one another down in San Jose. They have offices all over the place down there. And so apparently the hundreds of employees are leaving because they are totally anticipating Musk coming in and cleaning house. I just think that is completely hilarious. Like I said, when he said that he wasn't going to buy Twitter, and wanted to go to court, I was seriously doubting whether or not that was going to happen. But the fact of the matter is that he is essentially going to do it now. And I just hope that he'll do what he says he's going to do and clean house, get it all cleaned up, and make it the free speech platform that he is looking to push, similar to Rumble, as far as allowing anybody to come on and make videos and everything else. All right. That is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If this is your first time watching the program and you would like to continue seeing when I transmit, do me a favor, head on over to Rumble in particular, sign up for an account. It's free, and hit subscribe. You will get notified when I go live on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I go 1 hour later on Saturday because, hey, I have Saturday off of my regular job, so I try to make sure that I have time to do the things that I need to do in order to make this program the best that I can. And thank you again to all of my 301 subscribers over on Rumble. I do appreciate all of you, especially all of the long-term people that have been here. Thank you very much for making this channel the best that it can be up to this point. I am looking toward the future to make it even better. We'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast Saturday night for my Halloween special. And we'll see you then. Good night, everybody.